D. McClung, Arctra Monologues, February 24th, 2017, and it's spring-like weather outside. 68 degrees, mind you, at this hour of 10:30 in the morning, a.m., where I am, where you are, who knows? And when you listen to this, it's not going to be 10:32 a.m., because I haven't posted this, and it's not live. It's not a live show. It's recorded, pre-recorded, and then posted to the like YouTube and to my radio channel on online radio show through Speaker.com. And of course, I posted to YouTube, Facebook, Google Plus, and other places, social media, and so on the web. So I'm kind of behind. I've got about 8 shows that I haven't posted yet that I've recorded over the past couple of days. But I'll get to it, and it will be posted. And when you listen to this, then you can assume it's posted, because otherwise you couldn't hear it. You wouldn't even know it existed if it wasn't posted online. So I'll get to that, and it will happen. And you will hear it if you're listening and tune in. Tune in and listen to some smart stuff and learn. I was just thinking to myself, well, I was kind of talking out loud to people that aren't here. Pretty much like I was doing, what I was doing is, let me put it this way. What I was doing is I was rehearsing the show. So I haven't started recording the show yet. So I was rehearsing it before I actually recorded the show. There's another way of saying that. I was actually doing the show, talking out loud as if someone was listening, like in the studio here, actually sitting here in the studio, live, in person, flesh and blood, listening to me, and perhaps interacting and communicating and talking with me, conversing with me live in my home, which is my studio as well, but not. In other words, occasionally I rehearse the show or just have conversations with people who are not here. Now that doesn't mean I'm insane. There isn't even a question there about that, because I am verbalizing it out loud, expressing it, but to no one in particular, but perhaps to someone in particular who is not here at that moment. Now, see, it was easier if I just said, it would have been less complicated if I just said I was rehearsing the show and I happened to be alone in the studio when I was doing so, and I wasn't recording that rehearsal. And then you would say, oh, that makes sense. I would assume you would say that. But if I don't say that, if I just say, I was sitting here talking to myself, and no one was here to listen, and so I just imagined someone was here, and they weren't really here. And then you would say, talking to yourself, what you're doing, right? And so it's a little tricky. And you would say that and say something else, and then, it would be difficult. And it might be just a little bit complicated, because I would argue with you if you were to say that. Because that's not a sign of insanity. I was exercising my ability to express myself verbally out loud with words, using my mouth and voice and vocal cords. In order to express them. Now, if I do the same thing as that, except instead of saying it in words out loud in my studio where I'm alone and not recording it on recording machine, how could we describe that? How would we define that? Well, maybe I wasn't recording it like I am now, right now, this show, right now, live. I'm alive. The recording is making little little shapes on the screen of my computer and recording it, and for posterity. But when you're listening to it, I'm not here talking to you. I'm not talking to you directly alive at that moment that you're listening to this. Might have recorded it days ahead of time. But let's say that I wanted to express a thought or a vision. And when I say vision, I don't mean like, oh, you're having visions, are you? And I don't mean like some sort of religious hallucination. I mean like a visual depiction of an idea. And I can explain that by saying this. Let's suppose I am an artist and I paint, using oils or acrylics and brushes on a canvas made out of cotton duck or linen on a stretch, canvas stretched over a frame or on whatever surface I would be painting on. So instead of words, I'm using colors, shapes, forms. Suppose I take a photograph with my camera and then print it out on a piece of photo paper or post it on my website on the internet. Expressing a thought by using light reflective colors, shapes like squares, rectangles, triangles, circles, or just lines or areas of color filled in with color to express an idea. So that would be, let's say you're looking at a picture, a painting or a drawing or a photograph, and you're thinking, there's a picture. And maybe you say to yourself, that's a picture of the D-Man. Let me try that again. I wish I had echo on this. I wish I could do an echo. The D-Man. I've got echo on my studio recorder, but not on this studio recorder. At least I don't think I do. I haven't seen that. I haven't seen that button. So anyway, if I'm expressing a thought and I paint that thought in a picture type thing or an image type thing, just some colors on the canvas. Some people might call that an abstract. And by the way, abstracts, expressionism, hard edge expressionism, which is my thing. I do that. I also do uniplexity or uniplexism, which means one of many parts, a thing of many parts. Thus, the word uni and plexity. And by the way, I invented the word, it's my word. I'll allow you to use it as long as you're describing an actual uniplex situation. Like the union, the United States government union, like the union that is created of one and thus becomes many. Like the many states become a union of one. One union. One union of many states. Okay? That's a uniplexity. I don't know if anybody has ever used the word uniplexity. Well, since it's mine, I invented a word. It hasn't become a household word yet. It is not even in the dictionary. I know that because I've looked. And if it was in a dictionary, I would be proud. Like, wow, they took my word and made it, worthy of being in a dictionary and defined in the dictionary as I've described it to you just now. So if I paint a painting and an image that is a vision, because when you look at it, you see it. And if I look at it, I see it. And so it was in my head, and I could see it in my head, and then I painted it exactly as I saw it in my head on the canvas. So, vision in that sense. Now, when it's not necessarily some grandiose vision. It's not like, oh, I have a vision for America. Not necessarily. Doesn't mean that. It's more of an individual image thing. It's like, I just had an image. Then I had another image. And then I had another image in my head. I saw an image in my head, and another, and another, and another. And then a whole lot of images in a consistent sequel of something going on. So I saw a picture, an image, a vision in my head, that. And when I got all done with that vision and seeing that vision in my head, it became like a moving picture, a video, if you wish to use today's word, a movie in my head. So it was moving vision. Moving picture, movie, or video, if you prefer. So that's what I mean by vision. I don't mean like hallucination. Now, I'm not suggesting that an hallucination is a bad thing, because sometimes it could very well be a good thing. In other words, it could be, the word hallucination could apply. I could be having an hallucination as a result of, swallowing some hallucinogens like mushrooms or LSD, which I have done neither lately. In fact, the last time I took LSD, at least consciously, because God knows the government could have been slipping me LSD for the past, well, who knows, right? Because the government of this country does such evil things as slips a man a Mickey and an LSD, or even contaminates him with lies, propaganda. That's very common today. The government is indoctrinating people. Really, which is sort of like putting poison in their brain. Well, poison in their mind. And they do that regularly, consistently, persistently, daily, every day, to practically everybody in this country, America at least, and maybe even foreign countries, because America, as you know, is a fucking bully and goes around the world bullying people in other countries. So, that's just true. That's not, we're not going to debate that. So, if I have a vision, then it's, I am speaking artistically or mentally, as in having an idea and not an hallucination. Well, it should say, if I'm doing LSD and I have an hallucination, that's legit, because that's what the drug does to your brain. It allows you to have hallucinations or visions, whatever way you want to describe it. It's not quite the same as having a delusion, as Lewis Black would say, a delusion. Lewis Black is a comedian, if you're not familiar with him. A very funny one. And I like him a lot. Well, I like his comedy, in fact. But his personality is cool. Anyhow, delusion. So if you are having a delusion, then it's not quite the same thing as having a vision in your head, because the delusion is probably a little blurry, particularly considering it's not a true vision and it's not a true reality. It's like an hallucination because of some mental damage or mental disorder, brain damage. You understand? Okay. So if you're having a delusion, that's like, what is that word? What does it mean? It means you're believing something, let's say, or having a vision in your head that is impossible. That is simply not true. And if it's actually declared a delusion by someone, like me, for example, it means I have, pretty much proven that what you say you see in your head or believe in your head as a belief is simply not true. And I've proven it, and scientifically, etc., logically, what have you. And you still believe it. And that would make you delusional, which is a mental illness, which is under the category of fucking insane. So, bear that in mind. Now, moving on. If I was to conduct interviews with public figures, politicians and government public office holders, servants of the people, representatives of the people, for the people, let's say a police officer or a judge or a prosecutor, and I guess they have different titles, different states and so on. They might call the prosecutor the attorney for the state, whatever the title for that office might be in your particular area, esquire, and so on. You have the lawyers for the defendant or the accused, attorney, esquire, advocate, and so on. I'm an advocate, by the way. And when I say advocate, I use that in the dictionary definition of the word, meaning I advocate, which includes the responsibilities of being an advocate is, well, for one thing, I want to make this clear, I'm not a licensed, controlled, manipulated by the fucking government kind of lawyer person. I'm not an officer of the court. I am not a certified, licensed lawyer or attorney. So when I say I am an advocate, which is, technically speaking, I'm not registered or licensed or controlled, nor do I belong to the courts or the court system in America. I am a free and independent lawyer. Now, there's some question about, can I call myself a lawyer or an attorney if I'm not a part of the legal system or the injustice system, as we'd call it nowadays, since the legal system in this country is totally corrupt and absolutely insane because they put innocent people in prison. I mean, it's that simple. They do that. I mean, every court in this country at some point punishes or penalizes or puts someone in jail, prison, etc., that hasn't really committed a crime. Every court in this country. Just like every cop or police officer, if you want to form formal, every police officer in this country has in some way, directly or indirectly, participated in putting an innocent person in prison or punishing them. Like stealing their property or coercing money out of them or extorting money out of them or putting them in a cage. Or guilt by association here, folks. If one cop kills an innocent man, shoots him in the back, then that pretty much is an indictment against all cops, because all the cops, not necessarily every cop, because some cops might say, that's just a crime. What he did. He murdered that guy. And they might be very verbal about it, but they more than likely will not be verbal about it because they know that the cops stick together, just like crooks stick together. Although occasionally you might have a cop that is an honest, decent human being and say, he murdered that guy. Shot him in the back 3 times and he murdered him. He's guilty of murder. And he's a cop. And he murdered someone wearing a uniform. He shot somebody who didn't commit a crime. And he might speak out against that and be verbal. But that doesn't happen very often. I don't hear it. I haven't heard lately, recently, let's say in the last year, I have not, as of now, heard a policeman in America say, that guy murdered someone, and he was a police officer, and he was on duty at the time, and he fucking murdered the guy, and, he should be, arrested. Because murder is a crime. He broke the law. I don't want to hear his excuses. He did. Should be arrested, tried, and if the evidence says so, like witnesses and, like maybe video of him shooting some guy in the back, bam, 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 and that video is on the internet, it's pretty obvious, oh, fucker, he did it. We just saw him do it on the video, or we saw him in person because we were there at the time when he was, some guy, and he shot him in the back, and we saw him do it in person with our own eyes. Guilty, 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 guilty. You murdered him. You're guilty. You're going to go, You're going to have your neck struck. You're going to have your neck stretched. You're guilty. No, I don't believe in the capital punishment when it's carried out by the government, the current government, because the current government is a criminal or enterprise and pretty much like a little mafia or a Nazi organization. There are all kinds of words we can use to describe the present day police departments and so on around America. I was personally abused by a police officer in a local town here called Shinnston, West Virginia. Little burg, not too many people. At the present time, there could probably be several hundreds, if not thousands, in the area of Shinnston, in the jurisdiction of Shinnston. But it's a small burg. It's not a big town. It's like basically a one-street town. I don't know if there's any horses. I don't think there's any horses in town, so I can't call it a one-horse town. In fact, I don't know of any horses in the vicinity of Shinnston. Might be. I don't know. Maybe if there's a parade going on, they might have some horses, in the parade from the local farms and so on. So the Shinnston, and I'm not going to name names today because I can't recall exactly the names of the people involved. After all, it's been 2006 to 2017 is 11. It'll be 11 in December, so at this point it's 10 years and a couple of months since I was threatened by the municipal judge of Shinnston. Threatened. My life, my freedom, my well-being was threatened by the municipal judge of Shinnston in 2006. And I'm not going to pronounce his name. I'm not going to try to pronounce his name because I want to get it accurate when I do, and I will reveal the names of the guilty parties involved in that case in a future episode. The municipal judge threatened me, which is a crime. And yeah, it is. And I find it sort of ironic, maybe, that the injustice system, the injustice or injustice system in America threatens people all the time. And yet, they enforce some law that was totally fabricated and arbitrary and made up by the criminals and the crooks in the government that says, oh, you threatened somebody, that's a crime, and they arrest you and put you in prison and shit. And when they what do they call a threat? You write something down on a piece of paper saying, you bastard, you killed my father, prepare to die, and that's considered a threat, and thus a crime. I'm not going to give an example of that. I'm sure you can think of many examples where someone is accused of making a threat and therefore arrested and put in prison for threatening to hurt someone in some way by using words, which are pretty much not, are just neutral. Words are words. They're like innocent until, they just are. There's sounds coming out of your mouth, or something you type on a paper or a page or on a computer screen, like words, letters, put it in a sentence, words in a row, by the way. I paused there for a second because I said the title of my first poetry book, Words in a Row, Book 1. Available on Amazon, by the way. D.L. McClung is the name of my page on Amazon. And more to follow, by the way. Not just poetry, but truth, words. Truthful, honest books telling truthful, honest things. I have several in the various stages of completion. One being Nips, a picture book. One being a book of fiction called The Barn, or The Farm, or I'm just going through some of the titles. The Farmer's Young Wife. The title's a little longer than that. That's just a basic title. And The Islander, and so on. And then there's the nonfiction books, the ones that are actually social political commentary. And, for example, U.S. Crimes Against Humanity. That's a rather large book. I'm projecting it would be a very large book with, many pages, because there are just a freaking endless flow of crimes against humanity committed by the U.S. government. With any luck, and if the government doesn't murder me, or, as they say, suicide me, or make me disappear into the dungeons of their catacombed prisons, never to be seen again, then I will hopefully write that book and get that completed and published, hopefully on Amazon.com as well. So, yes, I'm an author, among other things. So what I'm talking about here is I have an interview with, say, the prosecutor in Marion County, the local prosecutor. No, still, I was talking about Shinnston, wasn't I? Got distracted, didn't I? They threatened me, they intimidated me, they abused me, they violated my constitutionally protected rights. I don't mean the rights that I was granted by the Constitution. I mean rights that I was born with, like free speech and so on. And the bastard threatened me. Seriously. And I'm going to write that story and put it in a little book, or include it in a larger book. I'm certainly going to put that on the internet, on my my websites and my blogs and so on. The story of how Shinnston committed, well, the authorities in Shinnston committed a crime and treason and acts of terrorism and bullying against me personally. And I'm very familiar with the story, even though it's been 11 years ago, 10 years ago. I can still remember it in very sharp detail, which is remarkable. But it traumatized me, because they threatened me. The judge and a police officer and a conspirator in that was supposedly the bailiff in the courtroom, who turned out to be a prick. And who talks? And I'm pretty sure a bailiff doesn't talk to a defendant in such a manner as he talked to me. And why I didn't tell the municipal judge at that point that to reprimand the bailiff and remind him that he's a bailiff and he doesn't talk. And he certainly doesn't talk or ask questions of the defendant. That's not his job. He's silent. He stands there and does bailiff things. He doesn't, cross-examine the defendant. That's the judge's job. Or the prosecutor's job. And apparently there wasn't any prosecutor in that case. There was a judge and a cop. Very large man. Seriously, apparently there's no physical standards for Shinnston. You can be a cop even if you weigh 500 pounds. Wow. I don't want to be body shaming the cop, but the fact is he was large, and I can't imagine a cop being that large and still being a cop. I mean, I don't think his uniforms have had to be custom made, because I don't think the average cop clothes would fit him. He was huge. And to be honest with you, the only reason I mention that is that the locals who are familiar with Shinnston and the police force and so on, they knew who I'm talking about, because he was the biggest guy on the police force in Shinnston. There was just maybe even the largest man in Shinnston, or lived in, resident, whatever. He was freaking huge. And I'm not body shaming him. That's not that. If it's what you're thinking, then you're just being an idiot. So stop it. But he was huge. So anybody that lives around Shinnston and certainly experienced any unpleasantness at the hands, loud noise, that experienced any unpleasantness at the hands of these Nazi fascist police state bullies, thugs, and criminals, traitors, etc., they will know who I'm talking about. And I don't know if he's still on the police force. Maybe he's retired. Maybe he died. I don't know. And I don't wish him dead. I mean, I don't think his crime raises to the level of being a capital crime, but it was disgusting and detestable and despicable and contemptible. But still, that has nothing to do with the fact that he was huge. I was just describing the man's physical appearance and physical presence for those who live near and around Shinnston. So I'm sure you recognize who I'm talking about. You might even know his name personally. You might even be his neighbor. You might have been subjected to some criminal act as a result of him, accosting you on the street or whatever. But to be honest with you, I think he was in pretty good physical shape, considering, even if he was huge, because he drove a police car, and he kind of had set in a certain way to drive it because he was just too big to sit behind the wheel. I think he kind of sat sideways just so he could get in there. I don't think it was safe for him to drive a car, to be honest with you. I mean, a man of that bulk could not possibly drive a car safely. I just don't think it's possible. But anyway, personal observation there. Perhaps an opinion. So anyway, the cop, the judge, and the bailiff cop all committed crimes, violated the Constitution, violated their oath of office, violated me, committed a crime against humanity. Now, see, does it level? What is it that constitutes a crime against humanity? Well, anything that harms humanity as a whole or as a part of it, because I'm a part of humanity. So that's kind of stretching it, the definition at least. So, we won't directly charge them with crimes against humanity. Unless it turns out there are other people like me who've been abused, threatened, perhaps even put in prison or even murdered at the hands of these bastards in Shinnston. I didn't say they murdered anyone. I said perhaps there have been cases of that happening. I don't know. And if I had evidence to that effect, I guarantee you I'd be telling you about that evidence right now. I'd be pointing that out. I've got evidence that these bastards murdered somebody, and I would be presenting that evidence to, a court of law. Not to the court of Shinnston, because they would be the victim. I mean, they would be the accused, and you can't be the judge in your own trial. I mean, that doesn't work. Just bizarre. Although a lot of times that's sort of what happens in certain ways. It does happen. The judge turns out to be part of the criminal gang that is committing the crime. So if your police officer harasses a citizen, your police officer, meaning he is an officer of the court and you're the judge of that court, in Shinnston, for example, and your officer of the court being the police officer, which he was, violated my rights, then that judge becomes complacent and complicit in that crime of threatening me over the telephone, as it were. So I'll get into the whole story and all the details of that crime against me, at least, and their violation of their oath of office and a violation of constitutional laws and just pretty much being a fucking prick. I wish I knew the names of these people. I could say them out loud right now, but I don't remember exactly. So I don't want to just speculate on what their names are. Let's put it this way. Whoever was the municipal judge in Shinnston in 2006, December the 6th to be exact, that's the guy I'm talking about. And the police officer who was huge, and in the year 2006, December, who was responsible for terrorizing me and intimidating me and participating in a crime against me, and therefore dereliction of duty or abuse of power, etc. If you were around in 2006 in Shinnston, you know who I'm talking about. Like I say, details to follow when I write this all out in book form and post it on the internet and sell it in a book form on Amazon.com. All right. So I'm doing the interview with this guy who's the prosecutor or the sheriff or a police officer or a municipal judge or a circuit judge like Judge James or Judge Wilson and so forth, the Marion County Circuit Court judge. There are lots of judges in America. Those two in particular are the local ones. So if I was doing an interview with, say, the prosecutor, or let's just say a police officer in Marion County police officer, or a city police car officer in Shinnston or Fairmont, and I'm in their office, their domain, and I conduct an interview, which I'm going to do. I'm planning to do it. This is scheduled for the future. And I asked this guy a question, and he doesn't tell me the truth. He has violated his oath, because he has to tell me the truth. He's under oath. He presents himself with a lie and answers the question in a lie. Then he has committed a violation of his oath, which is that he can't lie because he's an employee of mine, and he has to tell me the truth. Truth, whole truth, nothing but the truth. So what we got? Because if the law applies to me, it applies to him, the judge, the policeman, or whoever. H-O-W, not M. No M on that. Or whoever. Little pet peeve of mine. People using the word whom all the time. Like, oh, I'm so sophisticated, I'll just use that. Oh, whom. When the actually correct word would be who. W-H-O. All right, I'm going to stop the show here pretty quick because I'm running out of time anyway, and I don't want to get into all the details of what I've just brought to your attention. Yet, I want to do it correctly and accurately and properly. So I will tell you the story of the Shinnston incident in a future show and in a future book. Alright, so have a nice day, and I'll talk to you later. This will be posted as soon as, ASAP. But not necessarily today. Today that I'm actually live speaking to you right now, like the 24th of February. Maybe the 26th or 7th of February, or the 1st of March. But eventually it will be posted, and you can listen to it and learn something. That's Art to Monologues by D. McClung. I'll catch you next time.